Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today we bring in Bernie. Bernie's an Amazon seller. He's also a public speaker and runs a software company, but I'll allow him to give you a bit more of those details. Bernie, good day.
Hey, Danny, great to be here with you.
Excellent. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer by background, and saw this opportunity and had done a lot of work in devices, operating systems, and devices. So I really wanted to build a better electronics company, and this was around 2008, 2009, where I was thinking about this, and it aligned with this time frame where Amazon was rising as this market platform where a relatively small company, a new brand, could target customers globally. The timing just kind of worked out. So Pluggables Technologies, which is my company, is an electronics company. We have about 120 products. We started in 2009. We kind of bet on Amazon from the start, Amazon and FBA, started slow. Well, actually started slow and then fast and then slow again. And recently we've actually had some pretty big growth. Along the way, we've had, just an amazing amount of kind of smash hits and, miserable failures, and I've learned a lot from all of those.
Fantastic. So pretty much you've been grandfathered in to the whole FBA. You're like, 2009, we're going back some now, isn't it? So no,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Normally, like the people that we speak to, they kind of got involved with FBA 2013, 14, 15 period. So yeah, you've been in the game a long time. So obviously you've had a lot of success, 100 plus products, but today you're going to educate the audience on one of the failures that you had. So tell me about the product we're going to discuss today.
Well, so 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, I was working at Microsoft, and then a few years later, I was a developer on the Bluetooth team. And so became very interested in Bluetooth. And Bluetooth is this technology that it's amazing now how kind of pervasive it is. And so with Pluggable, part of the idea is that we'd be doing products that we knew about. It was in our wheelhouse. And so USB and Bluetooth were the two areas where that was true. Another thing that we try to do is sometimes do products that aren't sexy, but that actually, have a lot of potential. So a classic example of that is actually a straight up Bluetooth mouse. And that actually, while, sometimes those things work out, and what I'm going to tell you today is a story of a mouse gone bad.
Okay, so what convinced you as a winner? We understand you had domain experience, been on the Microsoft team, involved with Bluetooth, you're a software engineer. So they all make sense from a background perspective. But what made you think that you were able to sell that and be successful with it on Amazon? What gave you those indications?
Yeah, so obviously a Bluetooth mouse type space is one of those spaces that's just extremely competitive. You've got both large, well-established brands and just endless numbers of small Chinese sellers, all offering Bluetooth mice. One of the things that we like to do is sometimes get a little simpler with products. Bluetooth is and we're going to get tech here, right? I mean, Bluetooth is a low energy technology. One of the things about Bluetooth is if you're careful about the chipset you choose, something like a Bluetooth mouse can actually run for months on something as simple as two AAA batteries. And so, a lot of the Bluetooth mice on the market had gotten complicated. They had fancy designs. They were targeted towards gamers. They had lithium ion batteries in them that needed to be USB charged. Lithium ion is trouble to ship. You run into all the kind of air shipping issues with lithium ion. So, the concept was basically to just go simply back to basics. A really nice mouse that fits nice for a normal person's hand, that doesn't use lithium ion, that actually uses two regular alkaline AAA batteries and will last for 6 to 8 months on those, and that we can sell it at a really price competitive point, because a lot of those simpler products, the big brands have offerings that are simpler, but they have a premium to them. And then the kind of the more low end or direct from Chinese factory brands, they may not explain the product well. They may not have good product photos. They may not have good product marketing. And then another kind of strange thing influenced me, which was, and this is important for anyone to realize if they're going to do Bluetooth products, is prior to 2014, you could just launch Bluetooth products and there was no payments due to the Bluetooth standards body. But in end of 2013, the Bluetooth standards body suddenly announced that any new products after basically January of 2014 would have this really large per product licensing fee that varies between $4,000 and $8,000 depending on your membership level. And so for these kind of lower end products, that kind of lump sum cost is very, it can mean that the product is no longer desirable to launch. So what I'd done, because I was aware of all this, is in January of 2014. Me and a lot of other people went and prospectively registered as many Bluetooth products as we could think of before this deadline came down. So I went and registered like 100 Bluetooth product ideas. The trouble was we had to kind of lock into certain aspects of those products, which chipsets they were using, suppliers, and other things. And so actually this mouse that seemed like a good idea and turned out to be a disaster, we didn't launch it until actually I should check the exact date, but we basically didn't launch it until 2016. But I actually had laid out all the details of it in a Bluetooth SIG filing in 2014.
Right. Okay, so why did it take 2 years? Because of other products, I imagine, going on at that same time. Was this more like a labour of love and it took 2 years to get to the market because you had other products in the catalogue that took priority, or?
Yeah, no, it's actually, in a sense, a warning sign or whatever, that we had higher priorities. We try to launch about 2 to 3 new products a month. And we always have a deep queue of ideas, and then we're prioritizing within those. And this is a competitive space, and there was a nervousness about that, and so that caused it to be kind of not come to the top of the queue until about 2 years later.
Right, gotcha. Okay, so there's 3 main questions here we're going to go into. Is where did it all go wrong, and then how much time and money was invested? So let's start with, where did it go wrong in your mind?
Well, so what went wrong was we launched the mouse, and it was a huge. The stats looked great. It was a success. It looked like a rocket ship. We had priced it right. We had a great product. We hit the market with kind of a good market plan. And it started ramping up in sales. The reviews started coming in. The reviews were good. And one of the challenges is when you're in a highly competitive category, the run rate to stay at the top of that category are huge numbers. So basically, in the Bluetooth mouse area, you're looking at having to have in the range of 4,000 to 6,000 units per month in order to be, I think, in the top 3. My data is getting a year or two old here, but it's very large numbers relative to our normal MOQs. So basically, we had a great launch, and it looked like a success. And so then we did a 3,000 unit reorder as soon as the first 5-star review came in. And we don't do review clubs or anything like that. Never have. So these are we're waiting for the organic reviews to come in, and so we're forced to kind of make kind of risky bets. The biggest risk all of us face when we're launching a product is that the first reviews are going to come in negative, even if the long-term average might be better. So this was one of those products where the reviews came in good right away. So we started reordering, ordered 3,000, layered on another 3,000 unit PO, layered on another 3,000 unit PO. This is what we needed to do to bet on success. And so then, and this was a new vendor for us. So this was, there's lots, it's a relatively low price product, but there was lots of risk going on here. New vendor, very competitive category where we had to be very aggressive about placing POs. And so what went wrong was the vendor, was just not a good vendor in terms of their attention to detail. Yeah. And so we had worked on them prior to product launch on, some improving some subtle details of power management. We had tested everything heavily. But then when they got these purchase orders, the first thing they did, which was a mistake, and we should have been communicating with them to make sure that they didn't do this, is they as we laid those POs on, they bundled them all together into one production batch. So instead of actually producing 3,000, 3,000, 3,000 in separate time periods, they did 9,000 all at once.
Can I just break that bit out a bit, just for the audience? So what we're talking about is multiple POs. So from my understanding, the reason why you've got these backed up POs is because, let's just say you've got a lead time of 30 to 60 days, but you only want a certain amount or longer. So you've got your stock that's in Amazon, you've got your lead time to get your stock to Amazon, and then you want to stagger the units going in by raising these POs to make sure that they go in a formative queue so that you don't get like, oh no, it's 90 days and you get caught out. So you're staggering the POs to protect yourself per se, but ultimately you have committed yourself. And what you're saying is that instead of in the background, they're aligning your production times with their other clients, they've whacked it all on press at the same time and then manufactured an ill batch, basically.
Yep. Yeah, and the lead times in electronics are brutal. They're really hard to deal with. The lead times were not the longest here with this particular product, but you've got you could ship a cheap product like a mouse by air, but you're going to lose money. So you're counting on sea shipments. So there's you have to count on 5 to 6 weeks from China to the U.S. And then, once you place a PO, there's very few factories today who can deliver like within 30 days or so an electronics product. More often, it's 60 days for an easy product where there's no kind of supply constraints. And then it can really go up from there where you've got individual components within that are long lead time. That wasn't the case here, but still, it's basically about 3 months of lead time. So, it feels like you're steering an ocean liner. You're an ocean liner at high speed. You think you're headed for an open channel, and you're putting on the gas, but in fact, there's a rocky outcropping that you didn't see that you're headed towards, which is what was happening here.
So we understand the timelines bit. So where did the part that goes wrong? You said you started to get some good reviews in the beginning. Did suddenly the tide turn?
Yeah. So what happened was on this 9,000 units that they ended up bundling together is they got confused about firmware versions. And they ended up putting on these 9,000 a different firmware version than they put on the first batch that we got that was fine, that was getting great reviews. They did poor testing. We didn't have a factory inspection. Now, and I'm not convinced that we would have caught it with a factory inspection, because what happened with this new firmware version is it introduced a subtle sleep problem. And these sorts of kind of sleep-wake problems, and especially when they're subtle, can be very difficult to figure out. In fact, even though we really try to stay on top of our products, it took us about a month or two once these 9,000 units started mixing in with our older units. It took us about a month or two to realize, oh man, there's it's a bad firmware. Yeah. They've introduced a sleep-wake issue. So basically what was happening was once these new mice from these newer batches started hitting our warehouse, we started having customers reporting that the mouse would not wake their system back up. Now, not all systems are configured to wake from Bluetooth, and and there's a lot of stages of it. I mean, if a system, most systems when they're fully asleep will not wake from Bluetooth at all. So there's all this kind of subtle, kind of USB and Bluetooth power management state stuff that's pretty confusing for everyone anyway, including consumers. But the fact is that when you grab that mouse and you start moving it, you're expecting your mouse pointer on your screen to start moving. And that wasn't happening here because we had sleepy mice who were not waking properly.
So what did you do in terms of, sorry to butt in there, I'm very intrigued. So what did you do? Like, I'm just thinking, going off in my head, these massive alarms. I'm thinking either they're in a prep center and you've had to work through the items there. But firmware, it's not something that's easy to test on a non-scalable way, is it? So are you literally had to pull out a load of stuff out of Amazon, or did you have it in your prep center and someone's manually testing every mouse for the firmware action?
Yeah, it turned out to be just an absolute nightmare. So, yeah, I mean, firmware, is such a pain. In electronics, pretty much any kind of modern complex device has firmware. Usually the methods for, kind of reading anything back from that firmware to even get like a version number are either very crude or non-existent. And then certainly flashing firmware is, it's always arcane. And so, yeah, as it turns out in this case, there was really nowhere to kind of see a visible firmware version number. So other than by behavior, we couldn't tell what was going on. And then to actually flash the firmware, we actually needed to get airshipped from the manufacturer these kind of special Bluetooth dongles that they said were, I guess, handmade or something, and they could only get us 2 of them. We ended up getting 2, and only one of those 2 worked. And it took between 2 to 5 minutes per mouse to run their software over this special dongle to update or talk to the firmware on the mouse.
How many months was that spent with someone sitting there doing that or rotating that job?
Well, so this is the really sad part of the story. One of the things about selling electronics is there's a real danger that you basically electronic waste, right? I mean, whether it's through through all the various causes of having electronic waste, products that people turn over too quickly or whatever. But in this case, when we looked at all the options, and we can talk through them a little bit, of sending them, shipping the mice back to China, which, by the way, you can't really ship anything electronics back to China. You actually have, because China kind of has a, regulatory wise, they almost ensure one-way trade, through kind of regulatory.
They don't want it back, do they? They don't want it back. Let's be honest.
No, they don't. And so, if you're going to send something back to China, you actually send it back to Hong Kong, and then you sneak it across the border to get it reworked, and then you send it back out again. And so that whole sort of strategy just doesn't make sense for a relatively low-cost product like this. And then, the product sitting here in the United States in a warehouse with U.S. labor costs, it also didn't make sense to fix these units at U.S. labor costs. So basically, we've had to landfill 8,000 mice.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, was it the cheapest? Sometimes it's cheapest just to get rid of it, because you talk about time and money, because the amount of time that you would have to invest in it, which is equal to cash, if not more. How much, if you don't mind me asking, what was the damage there?
So the straight up damage was between $30,000 and $40,000, just kind of straight up cash. And then, there was an enormous amount of time loss too, probably another, a few $1,000s or $10,000, I don't know, of just time. Yeah. So it was for a product that, was always going to be, kind of a low margin product. It really was a huge amount of loss.
Yeah. No, because obviously in some cases that you can spend out 30 grand on your stock, but you may have made some money from some of the sales. But the sounds of it, it was a clean hit in terms of you wiped out that stock. There wasn't really money made back on it because it was on a low margin product as well.
Yep.
So what would you say, if we were to summarize, what are the 5 lessons you learned from that very one product?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So 5 lessons. I think, well, okay. So one lesson is, so one of our thoughts, the number one competitive threat, I think most of us in the Western world face right now who are selling on Amazon is that our own factories will compete with us.
Yeah.
Because almost every mainland China factory is spinning up its own brands and selling things directly on Amazon. So one of my, theories about that, first of all, there's no easy answer to that, but one of my theories about that is, the only way we can react to that is by being even more aggressive about identifying new suppliers, better suppliers who have the best product in a certain space. Because the one disadvantage that those factories have is, they're tied to their own products to some degree. They're somewhat flexible, but we have an advantage in that we've got no stake in the game with any particular factory, so we can go find the best one for any particular product. Okay, great. I say that then, but here was a classic example where we were trying to do a product in a very high volume category with a supplier that we were working with for the first time.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't do that. I think it's always good to, when you're starting with a new supplier, to triangulate. Okay, well, I may love this one product that they have, but I actually want to kind of start small with a first product with a new supplier, establish that relationship, understand how much, just understand the kind of quality they deliver. I think if a supplier is not kind of self-motivated about quality, if they don't have the mindset that, okay, we're going to be absolutely paranoid about quality because if we deliver something bad, the business will dry up. If we deliver something good, we're gonna share in the success, of the product. The factories that are meticulous about quality, and approach it with that attitude are great. But there's lots of factories out there that are more careless or more short term in their focus, and it's difficult to tell them from the surface. You almost have to work with them on a small project to to suss that out.
So the big one here is the factory. What about inspections as well?
Yeah, I think that's obviously the second one, is that especially when I think repeated inspections with a factory may have diminishing value, and the reason why is because if a factory has something to hide, they will hide it. And so really and so you do have inspections that come at surprise times and things like that, but inspections, I believe, are more valuable for that kind of meta information about a factory, not about your specific batch. Although if you happen to have a product that you have a really good test procedure to catch 90% of the problems, that can work out. What we tend to find in electronics is quality is kind of like it's like squeezing Play-Doh or something. You try to get your hand around it, and then you end up finding a problem in a surprising way. So I don't think you can, for complex products, it's hard to enforce quality from the outside. It has to be come from the inside. But an initial inspection of a supplier, when you're first working with them, can give you some good evidence about what kind of supplier they are, in terms of these kind of what seems like kind of secondary things, but actually go to their approach and attitude. How clean is the factory? What's their procedures for handling the materials? How do they handle documentation with the workers? How do they handle schedules? All of that sort of stuff. So I think absolutely it makes sense it might not make sense to inspect on every batch. It makes sense to inspect on every supplier just to kind of get that deeper background on them.
Definitely. So a couple more questions for you. So what are the three main metrics for selecting a product now moving forward for you?
Yeah, so I mean, we're a little bit different than most in that we try to build out a broad product line, and we've actually, maybe partially because of what happened with the mouse and some other things. We've always been USB and Bluetooth, and we're actually focusing more in the USB area now. But our goal is to have a kind of a broad, almost complete USB product line from traditional USB-A to USB-C to Thunderbolt 3. So we are, kind of constantly looking at what's new. We look very deep down the technology pipeline, into we're in all the standards bodies, in that area. And we're looking for products that, don't yet have competition, but do have evidence of good run rates. And so, yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot with our own tools, which is Efficient Era. So our tools basically it's an MWS, a software as a service application that we pull in all of our data.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we've got really good data for all of our existing products in terms of return rates and sales rates and when reviews come in and how fast they come in. And then, we also use research tools. We don't, in Efficient Era, have any run rate research tools. So we use Jungle Scout and other things to, try to get, kind of run rate data for keywords or a category before we try to, or competitors for a product before we launch it. And we're just, I think there's still, even though Amazon is extremely crowded, and there's no way to kind of be sloppy and win anymore. I mean, I think you could be sloppy and still win 3 or 4 years ago. Today, you kind of have to hit on all cylinders. You have to have a great product at a great price with great marketing and a great Amazon specific strategy. Yeah. And so, it's really just making sure that we move forward with things where all of those stars are aligned. And if we feel like there's red flags or warnings that maybe, our pricing isn't the best or our product isn't the best, or, we really, don't understand this space yet, we'll deprioritize those products and prioritize the ones where we can be confidently hitting on all those cylinders.
Fantastic. Well, look, let's wrap it there. Tell us a little bit more about the software, because it's also public facing as well, isn't it? It's not just in-house. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on the software and how people can reach you, etc.? Yeah.
Kind of like I said at the beginning, we started really early. We started in 2009. So there was really no Amazon specific software then. So, I'm a software developer by background. So we created a lot of software in 2010, 11, 12, 13 to help us be successful on Amazon. Most of that stuff had to do with customer feedback, automated communication with the customer, and automated gathering of the feedback we were getting from customers from Amazon. The kind of biggest part of that is reviews. We send an email out whenever you get a review, and we match that actually to orders that from assuming that it was an Amazon verified purchase review and you're the only one selling it. In most of the cases, we'll be able to match that exactly to the order so that you can reach out to that customer. And in certain categories like electronics, it's really beneficial to everyone, even though there's some question about kind of terms of service stuff. Really, the many reviews in electronics are really kind of customer service calls. Like, it didn't work. I connected it to my Dell. It didn't work. And in many of those cases, if we can reach out to the customer, apologize, and say, hey, we'd like to help, and treat it just as a normal customer service incident, we can actually turn things around for that customer. Okay. And that's worked really great for us over the years, and our Efficient Era tools are kind of what enable us to do that.
Brilliant. And if someone wants to get in touch with you personally, reach out, ask questions, what's the best email, etc., to reach you on?
Yeah, just email me at bernie@efficientera.com.
Excellent. Guys, thank you for joining us today. Bernie, again, thank you for joining us. We'll get you on in the future, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone soon.